everybody. Welcome back. I am your host, Bridgett Brown, and this is Beyond Beauty Project, the podcast. Today, I am chatting with Liz Brunner. She is an award-winning journalist, best-selling author, and the founder and CEO of Brunner Communications. With over 35 years in media and communications, Liz now helps leaders and organizations elevate their presence, their storytelling, and influence through her keynotes, executive coaching, and her online speaker training platform. She is also the host of the award-winning podcast, Live Your Best Life, and author of Dare to Own You, a powerful guide to reinvention and authenticity. She is also a friend of mine, and her story is amazing and beautiful, and she is authentic and just lovely, and I hope you enjoy our conversation as much as I enjoyed having it. Hello, how are you?
I am well. How are you? I'm so happy to see you, my friend.
I'm so excited. I just devoured your book this week. I love it so much. I know I kind of just told you that, but I'm going to tell you again. I thought it was just so precious, and I've known you for a little while now in the keynote speaking circuit world. And just like the humbleness that I always knew that about you, but just hearing all the cool things you've done. And I just love this book. So we're going to market her book, Dare to Own You. And we're going to talk about it today. But so I want to start out because you speak so fondly of your family. I loved just hearing the stories of your family. What's maybe the most proud thing about your upbringing?
That's the first time anybody's ever asked me that. Thank you. I appreciate it. I'm very close to my family. And in fact, I'm very close to all three of my brothers. My youngest brother, I would say, is my very best friend in the world. And of course, my mom, who's going to be 90 years old next week. My father is deceased. But, you know, I'm very proud of the fact that I was raised with good values, discipline. I make my bed every day. You know, it's those kinds of things. And because my mother was a social worker and my father was a minister, you know, every meal, 6 o'clock, every single night, we sat down for dinner, and it was always having conversation and very deep conversations as well. And so I'm very comfortable with having those kinds of conversations with people. And those are the most meaningful because let's face it, connection is one of the most important things that we can have in our lives. And I was with some girlfriends last night celebrating one of their birthdays, and we were talking about how important this connection is. And so I feel like I have that with my family. Not everybody does. Look, my family's not perfect at all. Yep. And I'm such a firm believer that every family is dysfunctional to one degree or another. It's just where you fall in that spectrum, right? Yeah. So, you know, we had our moments, but I'm still very proud that I came from the family that I came from.
Yeah. Do you feel like this connection you guys had as a family was almost like the seed that started your career?
It probably did in some way. And, you know, you've read the history of my ancestors in the book.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, there was a lot of history there that I didn't know at the time until I was writing the book that impacted me in such a profound way. And so those connections, those roots, if you will, going back generations to even when, you know, the Apostle Thomas converted 12 families to Christianity in India, you know, eons ago, all of those roots are so important to me. And as I've gotten older, they've become more important to me.
Do you think it's because you can understand yourself better?
Yes. I mean,
and that goes into owning you.
Exactly. And when I was writing the book and I was putting some of this family history in, and I thought to myself, why am I so compelled to write this? And I wrote it down, and I went over to the Charles River here in Boston where I live and was walking and literally talking to the universe, Bridgett, saying, why do I need to put this in the book? Talking out loud. And what came to me was that whether it's conscious or unconscious, we all carry some sort of weight from our family, whether it's you need to be a doctor, you need to be a lawyer, you need to go to the school that I went to, or all of our family came from this school or this, whatever that sort of heritage is, sometimes we feel that weight consciously or unconsciously. And there are people who follow in parents' footsteps. I'm going to be a lawyer, I'm going to be a doctor because that's what my parents wanted me to do. And so when you carry that weight, you don't even realize how profound an impact it can have on your life choices.
Yeah, you talk about that a lot in your book too, which I loved. And I would think there's a lot of positive weights if that you also like to know about it and understand it and sort of really embody it. I think that's probably really special too. I think you actually talked about this in your book, but we talked about this too offline. Your mom wouldn't let you wear makeup growing up.
No.
It was until 16 and it was for special occasions and you don't even remember what those special occasions were. Why didn't she want you wearing makeup?
She was very concerned that as a young girl, she wanted me to be known for and accepted for my inner beauty, my inner strength. And putting makeup on would be a way of somebody paying attention to me for things that were not, quote unquote, my natural self, my authentic self. So much so that I never had a Barbie doll growing up because my mom thought that was too superficial. And, I was like, okay. I mean, at the time, I didn't really understand it. I do now more as an adult. But yeah, I don't remember what qualified as a special occasion to wear makeup. And what's interesting to me is because I ended up in television for 28 years where makeup was such an important piece of the equation. And for you in your career, right?
Yes.
Makeup was a huge, impact on your career.
Didn't do anything without your makeup and hair done.
Right. But I
Unless
love wearing
breaking
no makeup
news for you.
Right. Yeah, exactly. You're right. Exactly. But I love going around without any makeup on. But, as I've gotten older, I'm like, maybe I should put a little bit more on, a little blush
I actually,
at least.
as I've gotten older, I feel like I wear less because I think I've gotten farther away from that. Like I have to look perfect or I have to have my face on. I love that your mom did that. That's so cool.
Yeah.
It's like she wanted you probably to also understand that you were important, far more important than your appearance.
Exactly. That's the whole point.
Go mom,
right.
Go mom.
Yeah, go mom is right.
I know. Okay, so I related to a few stories you shared in your book, and we also talked a little bit about this offline, but you shared moments throughout both your career and your life when other women made it especially hard. I related very deeply to the moment where I believe you were in college and there was a mirror in the hallway and you were working as Miss Illinois at the time, right? Do I have that correct?
You have it accurate. Yes.
Yep. And you had came home, you were working incredibly hard and the mirror was put in your room with a note that said you could look at yourself anytime you wanted to. Yeah. Another one I really related to was when you first started in the media, you would go to work with no makeup and you felt like you just wanted people to see the real you.
Yes.
And I lived a lot of my life feeling like if I'm just nice enough, then maybe they'll see me. Maybe if I'm just this, that they'll see me, or they'll see that I'm funny, they'll accept me, they'll see that I'm smart enough. So I want to unpack that a little bit. And I guess we can start with why do you think these things happen? And why does that support from other women become so complicated?
Loaded question because I do think it is complicated. I wish I knew all the answers and the reasons of why women feel intimidated by other women or threatened by other women or jealous of other women, whether it's because of their looks or their intelligence or the career path that they're on or the job that they're holding. I believe it often comes from how they feel about themselves. Do they accept themselves? Do they have confidence in themselves? Do they have self-esteem within themselves? And if those things are lacking or waning or don't exist, then it becomes almost a projection onto somebody else. And, in your situation of why are you so beautiful? Why is it that it's not fair that you're as beautiful as you are, Bridgett? And, I would feel that people wouldn't accept me. And look, the fact that I know how to take care of myself, I have good bone structure thanks to my mother.
You're
but
beautiful.
those things were not things that I could control, but I can control what I do with it. And all of us can control what we do with it. And so, did I take care of myself? Yes. Did it have an impact and help me in my career? No doubt it probably did.
Yeah.
But it was a price to pay. It's like a double-edged sword. And I'm sure you can relate to this. It's like our inner and our outer beauty, if you want to use that word generically speaking.
Yeah.
Our authenticity was what helped us be successful, and at the same time brought us much heartache, much pain. When I came back and found that mirror in my room, in my dorm room with that note saying, now you can look at yourself anytime you want or all day long, I was devastated.
Yeah, I was devastated when I listened to it.
I was absolutely devastated because it was like, why? What did I do? I didn't do anything. Okay, you hate me that I'm Miss Illinois. Guess what? Being in the Miss America Scholarship Pageant helped me pay for my education, every penny of my education. And I'm proud of that.
Yes.
But even when I went to work with no makeup on, and when I moved to Boston, I never talked about being Miss Illinois 1979.
Yep.
I didn't want people to be one more thing they could hold against me.
I related to that as well. This was when I was like deep in my modeling career, and I would go, maybe I was at a party or a dinner where I was meeting new people. I would do anything so they did not ask me what I did. I kept like the questions going, like, keep it on them, because I didn't want that to be a part of how they saw me.
Well, you didn't want to be totally known for only that. You wanted to be known for your intelligence, your kindness, your authenticity, all those things that are so important. That's what we want to be known for. And when we're not known for that because people see something else or make a judgment, because we form perceptions of people in the first 3 to 5 seconds before we've ever said a single word.
Oh, interesting.
That's what happens. It's those nonverbal cues that we send out, and everybody's brain does this. And I love it when I'm talking with clients and they're like, well, I'm not judgmental. I'm like, well, guess what? Everybody is.
We all are. We all have biases.
Exactly. And in those first 3 to 5 seconds, our brain is going, it's like we're doing a computer scan of somebody going, oh, I can trust them. I can't trust them, or this or that, or that. It's human nature.
Or they must be this, or they must be that, or
exactly. It's human nature.
For any women out there, but maybe more like our younger women were, trying to be good role models for, what can they do when this projection of how another woman or girl feels about themselves goes on, gets projected onto them?
The hard part is that we cannot control what somebody else is going to think, say, or do. Bottom line. I can't control what this person's going to think about me. Now, can I control my actions? Yes. Can I control my response to their behavior? Yes. And sometimes you can address it with humor. Sometimes you can, depending on the situation and the context, you could even possibly say, I'm not sure I understand why you would say something like that to me. And I'm reminded of a situation where when I was coming into a newsroom, and one of my producers said to me, oh, I hate you so much. You're so beautiful without your makeup on. I mean, if I knew now what I know about myself, I would have turned her and said, why would you say that? That's a really hurtful, that makes me hurt inside. I don't understand why you would want to say something like that to me. Now, I didn't have the wherewithal back then. I was in such shock. But that might be another different response, or you can just let it go.
What if she responds in that moment and is like, but that's a compliment, Then
I would say, thank you. I appreciate. Thank you for clarifying that for me. As opposed to, well, you're wrong for saying that. I don't want to dismiss it. I mean, but again, depends on the context, depends on the situation. And I might have said that.
Yeah, there's something interesting there though, where it's like, a compliment, but it's not. There's a comparison happening.
Yes.
That we really need to stop, doing with women.
And we do it all the time. You know it. You see it in your work. You see it with the workshops that you hold. You see it with the people that you're connected with. We are always comparing ourselves as hard as we don't want to. I guess it's human nature in some respects, right?
Absolutely.
Just it is.
I love what you said. Just what we can really only control is our reaction. And so going back to some of my moments of like your example of the mirror, I wish I wasn't so reactive. Mm-hmm. So I think I would say really take Liz's advice and try to just control what you can control and understand that it is a projection and it really doesn't have anything to do with you. And you're allowed to shine. You're allowed to be you authentically, which we're going to dive into more. But okay, so you worked as a news anchor for 28 years.
I know, cool. A long time.
You had such a remarkable career. You mention a lot throughout your book that you were often the only woman assigned to a story or on set with a group of men. And I'm just curious, like, were there specific moments where being the only woman felt especially challenging, or you felt like you had to overcompensate? How did you navigate that?
Well, probably the biggest experience that I had that touches on what you're talking about was at my second television station that I was brought in to be the director of community relations. And I was the only female in upper management. I wasn't on the air. I didn't come to be on the air at that station initially.
Yep.
And when I was the director of community relations, I was the only female in upper management. And I was petrified, Bridgett, because I'd never done a management role. I didn't know how to do what I was going to do. And I remember thinking to myself, are they going to find out I don't know what the hell I'm doing? And I was petrified. And I didn't feel like I had any mentors or any other women that I could go to learn how to navigate this. And what I did was I did a lot of listening. I did a lot of listening and observing and absorbing as much as I could. And then I had to find a way to give myself permission to trust my instincts and rely on the fact that, yes, you do have a brain, Liz. Okay. Just
it's in
really
here.
Think it's in here somewhere.
It's in there.
Yeah. And so for me, that's how I handled it. That's how I maneuvered through it. Now, knowing what I know today, I wish I had had mentors. I wish I had had supporters in those roles. And I encourage all women and men, find mentors and people that you can learn from. And I did so much observing. I did so much just watching how they interacted. And what cracked me up is, I'd be going to lunch sometimes with these men and there'd be 3 martini lunches. I'm like, how are they doing this? I can't drink at the lunchtime.
Totally.
So
like
I didn't. I didn't. Yeah. So that was probably the most challenging time. And then what made it even more challenging, Bridgett, was that they asked me to be the morning news anchor. And at the same time, I'm still going to be the director of community relations. So I was wearing 2 hats, working about 80 hours a week, getting up at 2:00 in the morning, going to work at 4, whatever time it was. And I would do the morning news. And then I was done at 9:30. And then I'd go upstairs to my office and I would, put on my manager's hat. And then I'd work all day and then go to speaking engagements in the evening, et cetera. Now, what became really challenging was that in the newsroom, people knew. My colleagues knew that I was privy to very confidential information about them, whether it was research on ratings, et cetera. And so I was a bit ostracized because of that. So how, balancing what I knew and certainly wasn't going to talk about, couldn't talk about, and at the same time managing, I'm the only woman involved here and with all these other managerial men. How do I balance all of this? So it was not easy. I'm not going to lie. It was not easy.
Talk about, and I want to dig into this later, but you always say like no knowledge is ever wasted. It's like the skills you probably learned navigating all that was probably incredible knowledge that you've brought with you.
Yes.
I want to circle back for a moment because I forgot to ask you about Miss Illinois. Hold on. Circle back, everybody.
Circle back, everybody.
So as Miss Illinois, you participated in the Miss America pageant. So cool. So I have two questions here for you. I'm curious, what's one sort of toxic or challenging thing you maybe witnessed behind the scenes or behind the curtain? And then on the flip side, what's something positive that stuck with you and maybe you have that knowledge that you brought in, to the future with you?
I was very fortunate because I really had good experiences. I can't say, oh my God, that was terrible, or this was terrible, or oh my gosh. I really was very fortunate. And I think in some respects, I was somewhat isolated and protected, and perhaps some of my own upbringing contributed
That's
to
what
me
I
sort
just
of
thought of.
Yeah, contributed to me being able to balance all this. But I remember, looking around at all the women on that very first day of the Miss America Scholarship Pageant and looking at all these women going, they're so beautiful and they're so smart. And I'm feeling like imposter syndrome. How am I ever going to measure up with all these other beautiful women? And yet I was like, I'm here for a reason. I don't know what that is. And so I had a good experience. And again, it paid for my education, being able to do all of that. And then your second question was, you wanted to know
what's something positive that you got out of that experience that maybe you shaped who you are today, or.
Well, I think it's a piece of who shaped me, of who I am today, which is I learned about presence. I learned about how to carry myself, because from the time I was a little girl, my father was a minister. I was always singing in the church choir. So I was always up in front of people. Mm-hmm. And in high school, I was in show choirs and singing and dancing, because I've always been in front of other people. And when sometimes clients come to me and they say, I'm so nervous when I get up in front of people. Well, I have had my share of nerves at some point in time, but I learned how to have presence. I learned how to carry myself. So whether it was singing in the church choir, whether it was performing on stage, whether it was being in the Miss America Scholarship Pageant, representing the state of Illinois as I traveled to all these various engagements, all of that, as you say, it's my grandmother's quote, no knowledge is ever wasted. That was the impetus for my book. And it is. I mean, I carry all of those things with me. And I'm now able to help and teach other people about presence, about confidence, about authenticity, about influence, about leadership. And one of the things I'm really working on right now is the it factor. The it factor, intentional transformation, it factor, intentional transformation that elevates you to the next level. And it's aligning your physical, your mental, and your relational selves. Because when these are all aligned, that's when you can unlock this presence, this confidence, this command, this influence, this leadership. All of it is when you can unlock that once all those are aligned.
I love that.
Thank you.
That is so cool. So cool. Tell us maybe 2 tips on how to have more presence in our lives.
First of all, understanding what your strengths are and not your weaknesses, but your challenges. Being really honest with yourself, but what you're good at. And it's okay. Healthy self-promotion is okay. It's more than okay. You have to think like a peacock, right? Need to strut your stuff sometimes. And so
like
being able to, our red lips today, yes. And presence really is about the actions that you take or fail to take, the verbal and the nonverbal cues, the energy that you send out, and the decisions that you make. And your presence comes down to, look, you know it when you see someone who has presence, right? You can see it. There's a charisma, there's an energy that you feel and you can see. And there's nothing wrong with that. Now, sometimes presence is bombastic, loud. Somebody's really extroverted. But presence can also be calming and intimate. And I'm reminded of Maya Angelou, the poet. I was so honored to be able to interview her before her passing many years ago. So cool. And she had this quiet, calm presence that just was so amazing, Bridgett.
Powerful.
Very powerful.
I love that you said that because I can be on the quieter side. I can
You
be.
still have presence, yes.
No, but I love, I love that you said that because sometimes we can think it's just loud and,
Mm-mm.
yeah, that's really
A lot of
cool.
people will say, well, I'm not an extrovert. Extrovert and introvert really does not have much impact on presence. Might an extrovert be more comfortable expressing and owning who they are? Perhaps. But introverts who are successful have learned how to have presence. Presence is not a trait, it is a skill. You can learn how to have more presence, you can build your presence, just like confidence. You can build more confidence. It's not like you achieve confidence one day and then you're all set for the rest of your life.
Yeah, explain that a little bit more because I think people think you either have confidence or you don't, and they don't realize it's actually something that we can practice.
Absolutely, you can practice it. It's something that you build, it's something that you work on. And look, let's face it, life is going to have its ups and downs. And guess what? Your confidence barometer, it may go up and down. As you get more accepting of owning who you are, I don't think those dips are as big. There might be like a wave where some days you're going to feel like, hey, I'm just rocking the world today. And other days I'm like, oh, well, let's see. Thinking it'll lead to a little more eye cream or something.
A little more concealer.
It's a little more concealer today. It is a confidence barometer. And it's something that you can continuously work on. And I have all kinds of exercises in the book that talk about that. But one of my favorite ones, and I call it that I invented it, but maybe other people have thought of it. But when I'm having a really down day, and I have them, I'm not always up, I'm not always, on fire 100 miles an hour. But those days that I don't feel like, come on, Liz, come on, you can get it back. I will be out for a walk or a run, and I will do my ABC game. All right, let's see. A, I am authentic. I am attractive. I am accepting. B, I am brave. I'm beautiful. I am bold. C, I'm creative. I'm confident. I'm curious. And I try to think of as many adjectives as I can all the way through the alphabet. And sometimes I get to Z and I come back around again.
I love that. I'm doing that with my daughter.
Good.
Right.
But look, positive affirmations, I believe, make a difference because, back to the it factor and that mental piece. Okay. You have to have the mindset and belief that you can change. You can do things differently. Requires a whole lot of stuff, changing habits, changing things. But more than just believing that you can do it, you have to take action. And then it comes down to also that mental piece is, what are you telling yourself? Oh, what limiting beliefs are standing in your way? Oh, I'm not good enough, or I've never done that before, so I really can't go after it. I'm afraid to ask for that promotion. I don't think they're going to think I'm ready. Those are all limiting beliefs.
Yeah.
So what are you telling yourself? Because once you start, if those are the things you're telling yourself, they then become your actions, which becomes your reality. And if you don't believe in yourself, why should anybody else?
So your thoughts become your actions, which become your reality.
Yes.
And you talk about giving ourselves permission. What does that mean?
Oh, so many things. You have to give yourself permission to say, you know what? I'm not going to be perfect at everything, but I'm going to do my best. Give yourself permission to say, okay, I need to work a little harder on this. Or give yourself permission to say, wow, this job is just not right for me. And I'm petrified to leave because I've got family and I've got kids and I've got responsibilities and I've got this or that. I give yourself permission. Maybe you're in a relationship that is not healthy for you. Giving yourself permission to say, I can say no, I can move on. Yeah. Those are some of the hardest things to give yourself permission for.
I always say the best self-love is typically the toughest self-love.
100%.
Because it's usually the harder things when you really have to dig in and take care of yourself, that's going to be the best for you. But yeah.
We are our own worst enemies at times because we're afraid to move out of our comfort zone. We're afraid to let go of those limiting beliefs. And there's realistic fear behind a lot of those things. But being able to own who you are and giving yourself permission to own who you are, to own your authenticity, to own what's your truth, to speak your truth. And this is something for me, even at this stage of my life, I still feel like I'm now finally getting better at speaking my truth.
I love that. I love that. So you stepped away from a very high profile role as a news anchor. Was there a moment that you knew that it was time to give yourself permission to pivot? And I'm curious what was going on internally for you.
Yeah. Well, interestingly enough, I'll try and Reader's Digest this story, because when I was a high school music teacher, which was my first career chapter, I'm in career chapter number 4, by the way. So career chapter number 1 was when I was a high school music teacher singing semi-professionally. And towards the end of those 2 years, I was like, I just had this organic gut feeling like there's something more I'm supposed to do, but I had no clue what it was, Bridgett. So I left teaching, worked in retail to pay the bills, was reading all kinds of books and what I might want to do. I thought maybe construction or architecture or interior design. I didn't know. And I was reading a book called Who's Hiring Who by Richard Lathrop, and he talked about informational interviews. I'd never heard of such a thing. But I bravely and blindly called up the 2 television stations in Champaign-Urbana, Illinois, where I was living at the time, because I had done 1 television commercial in my life when I was Miss Illinois, and just basically to ask them, did I have to go back to college to get another degree? Fast forward, after about 6 months of conversation, a position was literally created for me at the CBS affiliate, and I learned everything on the job. So I was there 3 years, then the next station was 5 years, then I was in Boston at ABC for 20 years. But the last couple years of my 20 years there, I started that feeling again. I started thinking.
It's definitely an intuition.
It's an intuition. It's listening to your gut and trusting. And I just was like, there's something more I'm supposed to do. This business is changing dramatically. The women are getting younger and the men are staying and getting older. And that's just one change. And then just the pressures that were put on us and expectations that were put on us were just more and more and more, especially because of the rise of social media.
Yeah.
And so I went back to those informational interviews, and I started quietly and confidentially talking to people in the community whom I respected to say, what does somebody like me do when you think you might want to be doing something else? Because I had absolutely no clue, Bridgett, other than I knew that I wanted to take the talents that I'd been blessed with, the gifts that I'd been blessed with, and the skills and experience and expertise that I had honed over these 28 plus years.
Yeah.
And I wanted to be able to help people. I wanted to be of service in some way, but I didn't know what that meant. I finally narrowed it down to 3 lanes. I could be some communications expert for a company. Don't know who. I could maybe be an executive director for a nonprofit, although I'd never done that before either. Or maybe I could launch a business. Now, I had never, ever, ever, ever in my life wanted to own my own business, okay? I didn't think I was smart enough. That's a limiting belief.
Oh, yeah.
But I shared this 3-lane approach with one of my mentors, one of those people I was having conversations with, and he said, Liz, you're well known, you're well respected, you have credibility. That is value. Why would you give that value to somebody else? Launch your business. If you don't like it, you don't have any clients, you can always go do something else. Kaleidoscope went click. In that moment, in his office, I made the decision, I'm going to launch a business, even though I had no idea what to do. Yep. Ironically, during those 2 years when I was thinking, I don't know what I'm going to do next, I was playing around with a marketing team and was giving them some photos of me and Barbara Walters and me and, whomever. I'm like, just, make something up with this. I don't know, create a website. I don't know what I'm doing. Here's lizbrunner.com. I didn't know what I was doing. I said, you've got 6 months to a year. No worries. I called them that day and I said, remember when I said you have 6 months to a year to build a website? You have 6 weeks.
Because you're starting to get clients?
No. Well, yes, I did. But because I knew if I didn't make a commitment to do it in that moment, when I was feeling brave and confident, even though I didn't know what I was going to do, how I was going to do it, I knew if I didn't do it in that moment of time, Bridgett, I was not going to do it.
Ooh, tell us more about that. So when we're in this moment of feeling super brave and sure about something, we have to act.
I was very unsure, but my gut was telling me this is what you're supposed to do. So that comes back to listening to yourself, giving yourself permission to listen to that small voice in your head.
Yeah.
Because it's always there. We just don't always listen to it.
Yeah. Absolutely.
I think it's Oprah who says, it comes like a whisper and then it comes like a lion roar and then it hits you over the head like a frying pan.
Yep. Totally.
And so I made that decision and I just remember thinking to myself, okay, there's a quote by Robert Schuller that kept me going. What would you attempt to do if you knew you would not fail? What would any of us do, Bridgett, if we knew we weren't going to fail?
Mm-hmm.
So I did it. They made an announcement. I left the week later and I had my first client the very next day after signing off the air in New York City.
Wow.
Now, I was very fortunate. I know how fortunate I was that I had this platform from which to say, I'm leaving here and here's what I'm going to do. Go to lizbrunner.com. And within the first 24 hours, we had more than 1,000 hits on my website.
Amazing.
But just because I was fortunate to have that launch, if you will, I know it was my perseverance. I know it's my drive, which probably comes from all my ancestry.
Your preparation.
My preparation. And I had a business plan that I blew out of the water in the first 3 months. I didn't know what I was doing. And when I was starting to work with clients, I thought to myself, how do I teach what I know? And again, I had to really trust myself, give myself permission to really share some out-of-the-box thinking with some of my clients. Here's how I think you should do this. And here's why I believe this will work and does work.
Yeah, because I know, because I've done it.
I know, I've done it. Yes. Including giving myself permission to go from being retail or from high school teacher to retail to television to what I'm doing now. Right?
I love that. Okay, so let's talk about how your grandmother shared the statement, no knowledge is ever wasted. And it's really stuck with you. You say it throughout your book. So I felt as I was reading different parts of your book and hearing this, it was giving me a little bit more of like a remembrance and confidence, like, you know more. Like, oh, you know that.
Yes.
So I think it's a bit of like a confidence booster, but break it down for us.
Well, first of all, you know more than you think you know.
Yeah.
Bottom line. And the quote, no knowledge is ever wasted, is from my grandmother, Dr. Dorothy Chaco. She had 2 doctorates. She was a medical doctor in India. She started the first leprosy colony there. She was pretty amazing. And this was her quote. No knowledge is ever wasted. And the full quote is, no knowledge is ever wasted in the good Lord's sight.
With that accent.
With that accent, yes. So when you think about all of the things that you do, there are themes and patterns that run through your life. And one of my favorite things to do with some of my clients is to discover and uncover what are those themes and patterns. For example, what did you want to be when you were a child growing up? What were your passions? What were your interests? What were your hobbies? Is any of that in your life today? And when people hear my story of all these 4 career chapters, they're like, well, how did you do this? Go from this to this? Well, in my case, my themes and patterns of no knowledge is ever wasted. As a teacher and a singer, I was sharing stories through song and voice. As a news anchor, I was sharing other people's stories with my voice. As an executive communications coach, I'm helping other people learn how to tell their stories, which means their pitches, their presentations, their messages, etc., and learning how to use their voice well. And as a keynote speaker and an author, I'm sharing my story using my voice. So those are the themes and patterns that are in my life. And we all have them. We know more than we think we know. We sometimes will discount an experience. Well, I was just a waitress, or I was just a server. Excuse me? You are dealing with the general public. You're in customer relations.
I remember when I started my project, I was working with a coach And I'm like, oh, I'm so bad at the business side. Like I never ran a business. Like I never had a business.
Me
and she
either.
stared at me and she goes, I don't believe you. And I'm like, excuse me? She's like, I don't believe you. And I'm like, what don't you believe? But her point was, you had a successful modeling career for 25 years. You were running your own business.
Yes.
And there's a lot in there that we can pull from. And I was like, it was like a light bulb went off. And it reminds me of this quote that your grandma said.
One other share story, which is that about presence, because I remember before I had started my business and I was trying to think of what I was going to do, one of my friends said to me, he goes, well, Liz, you can teach people about presence. I'm like, me? What are you talking about? And then he started to explain all this. And then he said, people are going to trust you. He said, you being on television, were in people's homes. You were in their bedrooms. You were in their kitchens. You were in their bathrooms in some cases. And they trusted you. You know more than you think you know. You have presence and you can teach that to other people.
Yeah. And also during really hard times, you were with them, 9/11 and, the Boston Marathon bombing. And so you've interviewed some of the coolest people, lots of professional athletes, Oprah, President Obama. So you shared in your book openly how you were nervous, but you pushed through that to, get the story. How did you navigate that?
Well, probably the biggest, experience to kind of put that into some context was getting that interview with President Obama. I worked for 4 years writing the White House with no response coming back, asking for this interview. So cool. And people in the newsroom are like, oh, there goes Liz again. She's writing the White House. Well, guess what? When I finally got the interview, there were people like, well, why is she going? Why am I not going? Excuse me, I did the work.
Yeah.
And, here
for
I am.
4 years.
For 4 years. And I don't care what your politics are. The opportunity to interview a sitting president is a pretty big deal, especially at the White House.
Yes.
And for me, I kept saying to myself, Liz, he's just a human being first, number one. Number two, enjoy this day. Will this ever happen again? Probably not. Enjoy this day. Own this moment, as nervous as you might be. I remember I wanted to find a way to connect with him on that human level. And so there were 2 ways I wanted to do this. And the first one was when he walked in the room and he said, hello, Liz, and he reached out and shook my hand. I said, hello, Mr. President, or should I say aloha? Now, he was born in the islands. I grew up in the islands of Hawaii until the age of 10. So that was a nice beginning to the conversation of really connecting and on a very, peripheral up here level, just a slight start of a relationship, which is how you have those authentic conversations and connections. And then the last question that I saved for the very end, because I was so worried that his team would kick me out the door if I asked it sooner, was, you're the president of the United States. You're also the father of 2 teenage daughters. Which is harder? And nice. He laughed and he said, he was lucky he had 2 wonderful daughters. And so he kind of skirted the question. But what's funny to me is people who saw all 4 stories that I did on that day with my short interview with him, there were 4 different stories. What do people remember most? Aloha and being a father.
Because they're personal.
Yes. Relatable to every single person.
So Dare to Own You is the title of your book. So tell us how owning our story in our life helps us feel more authentic. And I would think it helps combat things like imposter syndrome.
It does. And again, it's giving yourself permission to own all of those pieces of you. And I want to bring it back to the it factor, because I really believe when you own yourself, then you really do have that it factor. Now, we talked about the physical, mental, and relational. So the physical piece of it is, yes, it's the energy that you put forth. It's how you walk into a room, how are you commanding when you walk in a room? Are you confident when you walk in a room? Are you authentic when you walk into a room? Then it goes to the next level of, are you taking care of this body that you've been blessed with? And you talk so much about owning your body and acceptance of your body, but taking care of your body. Look, we all know that taking care of our bodies, exercise, whatever, eating right, nutrition, all of that helps us live our best physical life. But then the physical piece, those couple of things that I shared with you there, when you own that and then you carry it over to your mindset, your mental, this is our internal GPS, okay? That's the bridge, the physical to the mental. And owning who you are, again, from the mental standpoint, what are you telling yourself?
Yeah.
Those limiting beliefs that you may have. And I love working with people, men and women, because this is a gender neutral issue. Both men and women have it. I think women are more vocal about their limiting beliefs with friends, if you will, than men are, but this is gender neutral. So it's what are the stories you're telling yourself? Because if you can own your strengths, and you were asking me earlier, how can you tell? Well, you have to own what your strengths are. You have to own what your challenges are and work on them. This is a lot of internal work, internal and external.
Own your strengths, but we're also owning our challenges.
Yes.
So we know them and we can work on them. Oh, I like that.
You have to work on them in order to grow and become your full, authentic self and own who you are. You have to accept and own. And sometimes acceptance is, look, I'm not going to be perfect at everything. I'm not trying to be, well, maybe I'm trying to be perfect, but I have those tendencies. I think you might as well.
Me too.
Yeah. Okay. But I know I'm not going to be perfect at everything. And sometimes being imperfect is more perfect because you're being your best authentic self.
I always say you're imperfectly perfect.
Yes.
Just the way you are.
Just the way you are. That. And a lot of that comes down to acceptance. And then relationally, you have to have a relationship with yourself first. Before you can have that relationship with other people, before you can have that relationship, which then carries out into the world. And it is owning who you are. It's the acceptance of who you are and where you are. And, as someone who's getting older, it is for me, I was just thinking about this the other day. I'm like, Liz, there's some things you've got to start accepting about yourself. All right. There's a few more lines here and that's okay. These are smile lines, right?
They're beautiful. Okay. So for people who want to speak up more, whether it's on stage, in a meeting, in their personal lives, you talk in the book about the soul residing in the larynx. I find that so powerful, especially from somebody who loses their voice, which I'm sure you have some thoughts on that.
Happy to share.
Yep. You also shared a story about feeling like you're screaming on the inside, but like staying silent on the outside. I can really relate to this, coming from being silent as a model for so many years. Since I've started my project, one of the things I say I'm always doing is I'm really now finding my voice. I almost feel like I was like a little baby voice and I'm like, nurturing it and it's getting stronger over time, but it's been terrifying, exhilarating, powerful, empowering, all of it.
All of the above.
All of the above. But what does it mean to own your voice? And do you have any suggestions for anybody out there or myself?
There's so much to say. No, there's so much to say. Okay. First and foremost, to go back to your point about that I was screaming on the inside when I wanted to be screaming on the outside. I had a very difficult and contentious relationship with my father. And I never felt like I could speak my truth. And so that's why I was screaming on the inside when I couldn't scream on the outside. I was not allowed to scream on the outside. And I would sob in my bedroom. And for me, tears for many, many, many years were my way of expressing myself because I didn't know how. What's interesting too is when it comes to the voice, particularly for women, I was just having this conversation with one of my gym friends this morning. She's actually my neighbor. And we were talking about men and women's voices. And why is it that sometimes women sound either aggressive as opposed to assertive? Well, it comes down to sometimes the actual language and words that you speak. It's a whole other topic. The other thing that can happen is we need to keep in mind that what you say, how you say it, and how you sound saying it matters. And sometimes even when you choose to speak up. Now, when it comes to the voice, learn to use this instrument. This is your instrument. We all can speak, unless it's a medical condition. We all have a voice. Learn to play this instrument. Learn to use this instrument. When I'm working with people, I work a lot on what I call vocal variety, which is not only the pitch of your voice, but the tone of your voice, the pace at which you speak, the rhythm of your speaking pattern. Mm-hmm. When women speak sometimes, but then again, this is another gender neutral issue. So I hate saying when women do this because I have male clients who do it and I've heard other men do it. What I call the up pitch, up speak, up talk. Yeah. It's when you're making a statement, but it sounds like it's a question. Yep. My name's Liz Brunner. I run my own communications company. Maybe my name is Liz. Maybe I run my own company. My name is Liz Brunner and I run my own communications company. The difference is powerful. So too is volume. Now, if you have a lot of up pitch in your voice, unconsciously or sometimes consciously, whomever you are speaking to, that listener, unconsciously may perceive, I'm not sure if they know their facts there. I'm not sure that I believe what they're saying. And it takes away from your command. It takes away from your presence. It takes away from how you're perceived in terms of confidence. And if your intention is to be perceived as being confident, and it might be being perceived as something else, where's the disconnect? Why is that going on? And that's one of the things I love to figure out with people. Where's the disconnect? Mm-hmm. So your voice is so powerful. And I just want people to learn how to use it. And then, of course, there are all the filler words, like the ums and the ahs and the likes and the rights and the so's and the, those too take away from command. And how do you minimize those? Here's a tip, everybody. Breathe. Breathe. There is so much power simple. In the pause. Power in the pause. Yeah. Think about this. Comedians are great at the power of the pause. They make you wait for the punchline. A lot of politicians are great speakers are great at the power of the pause. But we can all use the power of the pause. It's powerful. Yeah. There's so many things I teach people and coach people on when it comes to their voice. And when you said you were losing your voice, breathe, Bridgett. Just take a good breath.
I don't lose it as much anymore, but I used to lose it a lot in my 20s, early 30s. I was always losing my voice. And I think I wanted my voice so badly. And I think I think there was something there.
And I want to touch on that. I want to touch on that too, because when we're first learning how to use our voice to speak our truth, sometimes it's going to come out sideways and it may come out more aggressively because we're trying to push it through. We know we have to say something. We know we want to say something. And then we eventually, with practice and owning more of who we are, it balances out. And sometimes you need coaching help to help balance it out.
Okay. We're going to finish up. I'd love for you first. I have a final question for you. But before we do that, can you just tell us a little bit more about everything you offer?
Sure. Oh, thank you for asking. And my book, Dare to Own You, Taking Your Authenticity and Dreams into Your Next Chapter. Thank you. I work with people one-on-one in workshops. I'm also a keynote speaker, as are you. And so I work with people on all kinds of things, whether it's presence, they're achieving their it factor. I help them unlock the it factor with intentional transformation, how to align all the physical, mental, and relational pieces of your body so that you can unlock that confidence and have more presence and have more influence and have more authenticity. And a lot of that comes down to the actual verbal and nonverbal communication skills that we either use or do not use. So putting all of that together makes a difference. So I work with people on just about anything. And what I love about the work that I do, besides being a keynote speaker, I love the energy exchange with audiences. That's why I love the keynote speaking so much. But when I'm working with a client one-on-one or even in a workshop, I often see the progress in them before they see it. Bridgett, when they see it, when they feel it, it's like the best feeling in the world because they've now accomplished something that either they didn't know they could do or they didn't know how to do so.
Oh, wow.
Being able to help pull all of that together for them, I just really enjoy it very much.
You help them get unstuck.
I do. I help them get unstuck and go from where they are to where they want to be to who they want to be. To unlock their it factor.
Their it factor. I love it. I need to find my it factor. Okay.
Yes.
So any final advice for anyone feeling stuck, unsure of what's next, what their next chapter will be? Is there something more out there for them? What would you tell them to think about, be curious about, keep in mind?
I would recommend journaling if they're not already doing it. Number one. Because I've been journaling for 40 plus years now. And for me, it's extemporaneous. There's no rhyme or reason sometimes to what I say and what I write, but it's whatever's running through my brain. And sometimes I look like a pinball in my brain and it comes out in my journaling. It doesn't matter. It's getting it out there because then sometimes when you go back either a week or 2 or a month or 6 months, and suddenly you'll see these little nuggets and light bulbs going off, connecting the dots of your themes and patterns. So that's one way to begin. Another way to begin is use LinkedIn. When I didn't know what I wanted to do, I was like, maybe public relations, maybe communications, I don't know. And I would just put in and I'd search jobs that were available. Not that I was ever going to necessarily apply for anything, but what I did was, oh, I can do that. Yeah, I know how to do that. I could do that. Oh, no, I do not want to do that. And you begin to narrow down the focus a little bit. And the third piece of advice I would share is what was given to me, which I did, which was those informational interviews, especially when I was leaving television, which was, okay, find 3 people that you know, whom you trust, whom you respect, whom you admire, whether they're in an industry that you're in or whether they're in something that you might be curious about. And go ahead and figure out 3 or 4 questions to ask them, such as, you know my background, you know what I've done for 20 years, 30 years, whatever it is, or 10 years. What other career path do you think I might be good at? Because somebody might give you another idea that you never even thought of. And what do you think my skill set is? I had to translate the language we speak in TV to the language of the corporate world so that I could learn and they could learn what my skill set was. Breaking news is like crisis management in the corporate world. Being a project manager in the corporate world is like being a reporter or an anchor in television. So now I was able to explain what my skill set was. And then the most important piece of the informational interviews is after you've done it, obviously, thank you, all that good stuff. But who else do you believe I should be talking to? And will you connect me? Because if you don't get that connection, especially if you're going after some big gun, top level CEO person, how are you going to get in the door? You've got to have somebody introduce you often. And that's what I did. There's some tips. Hopefully people get,
And you trusted your gut.
I did. I was scared. I'm not going to lie. I was petrified.
But I was more to yourself.
Right. I was more afraid of starting my business than jumping out of an airplane and going skydiving.
I love that. That's amazing. Thank you so much. Tell everybody where they can find you.
Thank you.
They can keep in touch.
Yes. So go to lizbrunner.com. That's LIZBRUNNER.com. Not only can you learn about all the services, you can get my book and get right to Amazon through my website. You can also sign up for my newsletter. I would love for people to follow me on social media. And I promise I don't flood people's inboxes with my newsletter. It comes out once a month, okay? Initially, you might get 2 or 3 just as you start and launch with me. But I'm always trying to offer people value, some tips, some tools, some techniques, things that work for me, how I can offer helpful advice for free. So sign up, follow me.
Yeah,
I would love it.
That. Oh, thank you so much. This was wonderful.
Thank you so much. It was
Thank you,
wonderful
my
to be with
friend.
you, Bridgett.
Thank you for listening or watching Beyond Beauty Project, the podcast. If today resonated with you, pass it on to a friend. And to keep the conversation going, check out the workshops that I facilitate. For preteens to adults, we challenge perfectionism, we redefine confidence, and we really get back in tune with our minds and our bodies. I also offer keynotes for colleges and corporate, where I provide thought-provoking talks about redefining success and getting back in tune with your true self and your true genius. Subscribe to our newsletter where you can keep up to date on everything BBP related. And as always, we love to hear from you. So drop us a review, send us a DM, and I will see you next week.